This video, I'm going to be giving you guys my prediction for who's going to be UFC champions at the end of 2025. But before I give you guys my prediction for UFC champions who I think are going to be at the end of 2025, I'm going to give you guys my overview of 2024 and who I thought would be champions at the end of this year. So last year I posted a video of who I thought would be UFC champion at the end of 2024, and I think I did okay, guys. I think I did okay. For the flyweight division, I had Alexander Pantoja to remain champion at the end of 2024. That turned out to be correct, so check mark for me right there. Good for me. For the bantamweight division, I had Sean O'Malley still being the champion at the end of 2024, and mainly due to the fact that I thought he was going to be Merab Dvalishvili. Merab surprised me. I thought, Sean O'Malley's improving. I think his striking, his power, his speed was going to give Merab Dvalishvili problems. That turned not to be the case. Merab ragdolled Sean O'Malley for most of that fight. Yes, Sean O'Malley had moments. He had rounds, but just not enough to beat the cardio machine in Merab Dvalishvili. So I turned out to be wrong for the bantamweight division. Now for the featherweight division, I had Ilya Topuria being the champion at the end of 2024. I turned out to be correct. I said he would beat Alexander Volkanovski by knockout. I said he would beat Max Holloway by knockout. I turned out to be 100% with that prediction. Now for the lightweight division, I had Islam Makhachev still being the champion at the end of 2024. Now the problem with this one, even though I turned out to be right, was that I was kind of expecting Makhachev to have at least 2 title defenses this year. He only had one against Dustin Poirier, and even when I was predicting Makhachev last year when I made that video, right, when I was predicting his title defenses for 2024, I was expecting Makhachev to fight Justin Gaethje and then beat Justin Gaethje and then fight Armis Yurikin at the end of the year. But he ended up fighting Dustin Poirier, which was a fight that I really wasn't expecting. So yeah, I got it right in the sense that Makhachev is the champion at the end of this year, but the matchups just were not correct, if you know what I'm saying. And these type of videos are very hard to predict because you don't really know how many title defenses these champions are going to have. Like some champions defended the title 3 times, like Alex Pereira, and then guys like Islam Makhachev only defended the title once. So it's hard to predict who's going to be the champion at the end of the year if you don't really know how many times they're going to defend their title. So I'm just going to assume that most of these champions are going to defend their title at least twice. That's really what I'm expecting. I might turn out to be wrong, right? They might defend their title once. They might defend their title 3 times. I don't really see any champion really defending their title more than 3 times. So I'm just going to expect 2 title defenses going forward. Now, like I said, I got Makhachev right. Now for the welterweight division, I had Shavkat Rakhmonov being the champion at the end of 2024. I turned out to be wrong. I was kind of close in the sense that I was going to pick Shavkat Rakhmonov to be Bilal Muhammad, which I feel like I have a lot to say about that matchup. I turned out to be wrong. I was not expecting Bilal Muhammad to be Leon Edwards. I thought Leon would beat Bilal Muhammad by a very close decision, but I still thought like he was going to win, I guess, comfortably. I thought it was going to be a close fight, but it was going to be an obvious decision for Leon Edwards. I turned out to be wrong. Bilal Muhammad basically dominated Leon Edwards and made him look like a fool. So Bilal Muhammad turned out to be the champion of the welterweight division at the end of 2024. Now for the middleweight division, I was expecting Dricus du Plessis to be the champion at the end of 2024. I turned out to be correct. Dricus du Plessis, he beat Sean Strickland by a very close decision. Then he submitted Israel Adesanya in the 4th round. And guys, I've been telling you guys for a long time, Dricus du Plessis is that guy. I know he doesn't have a pretty style. I think he looks like a sloppy man on the feet, but man, is he good. He's so good. He has a heart of a champion. He's very well-rounded, and he knows how to win fights. And I think that Dricus du Plessis is still that guy, and I think he's going to beat Sean Strickland the rematch even more comfortably, I think he's going to make a statement, I guess, against Sean Strickland in the rematch. So I turned out to be correct in that prediction. Now for the light heavyweight division, was I wrong? I was expecting Jamal Hill to beat Alex Pereira at UFC 300. I thought Jamal Hill would be the champion at the end of 2024. I said, look, he's going to beat Alex Pereira. And then I see him beating someone like Magomed Ankalaev. I turned out to be very wrong about Jamal Hill personally and about his fighting style. And Alex Pereira is currently the champion of the light heavyweight division. Now for the heavyweight division, I was expecting Tom Aspinall to be the champion of this division. And in a way, I'm still kind of correct, right? Because Tom Aspinall didn't really fight John Jones. I thought John Jones was going to retire after his fight against Stipe Miocic and that Tom Aspinall would be promoted to undisputed, but that didn't turn out to happen. So those were my predictions for who would be champions at the end of 2024. And I think I did pretty good. I mean, I got Pantoja right. I got O'Malley wrong. I got Topuria right. I got Makhachev right. I got Shavkat wrong. Obviously, Bilal Muhammad is a champion. I got Dricus right. I got Jamal Hill wrong. And I feel like I kind of got Tom Aspinall right because he's currently the champion. I feel like Tom Aspinall is currently the champion. Beating Stipe Miocic in 2024 does not make you the champion. But I feel like that's a video for a later time. Now for my predictions for who's going to be UFC champion at the end of 2025. For the flyweight division, guys, I'm going to stick to Alexander Pantoja. I think Alexander Pantoja is very dominant. I don't really see anybody beating him in the flyweight division. He's already fought a lot of the top contenders in that division. He's already fought Brandon Moreno 3 times. He's fought Brandon Royval like 2 times. He's fought Manel Cap in the past. Who did he fight? Steve Erceg. He fought Kaya Sakura. And I think he beats Kai Kara-France, even though I do think that's a hard fight, potentially, because Kai Kara-France is very explosive, has a lot of power, is very short. I still think Pantoja beats somebody like Kai Kara-France, and then I see him defending his title one more time before the end of 2025, potentially against a Manel Cap, a Brandon Moreno, a Brandon Royval, and I think he beats all those 3 guys. So I'm going to go with Alexander Pantoja to still be the champion at the end of 2025. Now, moving on to the Bantamweight division, I think Umar Nurmagomedov is going to be the champion at the end of 2025. And I know that's not really a controversial opinion, especially right now if you look at the odds for his fight against Merab Dvalishvili, where he's a minus 300 favorite, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Merab Dvalishvili, which, I mean, I know that's a little bit ironic, right? Because I'm picking Umar to be the champion at the end of 2025. But I think that's going to be a very, very close fight. I think that's going to be a very hard fight for both Merab and Umar. And I still think Umar wins. I think Umar beats Merab by a very close decision next month. And then I think he ends up fighting Sean O'Malley later in the year. And what I see happening is I think the UFC is going to make Sean O'Malley versus Peter Yan 2 the rematch. And I think Sean O'Malley is going to end up winning that fight. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on Sean O'Malley. I think that he did so well in that first fight, even though a lot of us had Peter Yan winning that first fight. And I think Sean O'Malley has improved a lot since that fight. I think, Peter Yan has gotten back into his groove, but I don't necessarily think Peter Yan is like improving to the level that Sean O'Malley is, in my opinion. And just look at the fight that Sean O'Malley had against Merab and look at Peter Yan versus Merab. Like, Peter Yan got absolutely destroyed by Merab Dvalishvili, while Sean O'Malley had rounds. He had moments. He had moments in that fight where he hurt Merab. And I just think that Sean O'Malley is going to beat Peter Yan in the rematch. And I think he's going to end up getting his title shot against Umar Nurmagomedov. And I think that fight's going to be close, but I would pick Umar Nurmagomedov to be Sean O'Malley. And because of that, I think Umar is going to be the champion at the end of 2025. Now, moving on to the featherweight division, Ilia Topuria is most likely going to be the champion of this division. However, do not sleep on Diego Lopez, man. I think Diego Lopez has a very good chance of knocking out Ilia Topuria. I know that's crazy, man, but if you think about the style that could potentially beat someone like Ilia Topuria, is somebody that's very explosive, that's very dangerous, that has power, that's in your face. And I think that Diego Lopez has about a round and a half to knock out Ilia Topuria, and I think it's very possible. And I could see Diego Lopez becoming the champion of the featherweight division at the end of 2025. I know that's a very hot take. I know that's very controversial, especially with the way Ilia Topuria has been looking these days, the way he knocked out Volkanovski, the way he knocked out Max Holloway. But I predicted those things. I had been saying for months before the Volkanovski rematch against Makhachev that Topuria was just a nightmare of a style for Volkanovski. I had been saying that for months, and people call me crazy because Volkanovski looked absolutely unbeatable. He was coming off his fight against Jair Rodriguez. He was coming off his first fight against Makhachev, and I was like, you know what? I know Topuria doesn't have the resume of someone like Volkanovski, but when you think about the stylistic matchup, when you think about Topuria's boxing, his power, his durability, his confidence, I just think it's a horrible fight for Volkanovski, and I turned out to be correct. And I also picked him to knock out Max Holloway, which was very controversial because Max Holloway was coming off that win over Justin Gaethje. So I feel like I have a good read when it comes to the featherweight division. And I think that if there's somebody that could potentially knock out Ilia Topuria, I definitely think it's Diego Lopez. I'm still going to stick with Ilia Topuria because I do think that if Topuria takes him to the later rounds, he'll most likely knock out Diego Lopez. But do not sleep on Diego Lopez beating Ilia Topuria. Now, the only thing that scares me is that I could see that fight not happening this year because we know the UFC is going to make Topuria versus Volkanovski too. And I just don't see Topuria as a very, very active champion. So I hope that fight happens. But what I would like to see in the meantime is Topuria versus Volkanovski too. And then the UFC makes Diego Lopez versus Movsar Evloev too. The winner fights for the title, because Movsar, he's on a crazy win streak right now. He's undefeated. I know his fights haven't been like the most impressive or the most dominant, but he's still very skilled. And I want to see that rematch against Diego Lopez, because that first fight was on short notice. You know, that was Diego Lopez's first fight in the UFC. I think he's grown a lot since then. I think he's been more active than Movsar Evloev. I think it would be a very different fight. So I would love to see the UFC make Diego Lopez versus Movsar Evloev 2 a title eliminator. The winner fights Topuria. The winner fights the winner of Topuria and Volkanovski 2 later in the year. So now moving on to the lightweight division, I think Islam Makhachev is probably going to be the champion at the end of the year. I do have a couple of question marks. I do think Arman Tsarukyan could beat him. And I know that's a little bit crazy, right? Because Islam has looked phenomenal. I mean, I didn't think he looked that phenomenal against Dustin. That's another hot take. I thought he looked a bit off. I think he had an off performance against Dustin Poirier. And I think Arman could beat Makhachev. I think he could beat him by decision. I think his striking has come a long way. And when I think of Makhachev versus Tsarukyan too, I get that same vibe of like Leon versus Usman too, where, you know, they fought a long time ago. You know, the champion beat the contender back then. A lot of people are sleeping on the contender because the champion has looked so dominant. Islam being this example. Kamaru Usman looked so dominant. You know, he was coming off that win over Jorge Masvidal, knocking out Jorge Masvidal. The 2 wars against Colby Covington, you know, knocking out Gilbert Burns. I mean, Kamaru Usman looked unbeatable. Then he fought Leon Edwards in the rematch. And even though, you know, he was on his way to winning that fight, he did have a bit of problems. And then he got knocked out in the 5th round and then got whooped. I mean, not whooped, but he got beat in the trilogy. And I kind of see something happening here where I think Arman Tsarukyan is going to surprise a lot of people in this rematch. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people with his striking, with his cardio. The only thing that worries me a little bit about Arman Tsarukyan is I don't feel like he has the best fight IQ. And that does concern me against somebody like Makhachev, who has a lot of experience, who's very intelligent. I could see Arman Tsarukyan maybe forcing the grappling a little bit too much. But I think that if Tsarukyan, you know, trusts his striking, trusts his cardio, and, you know, doesn't really have to worry about the grappling. He does have to worry about the judo. He does have to worry about the submission threat. I think he could win that fight by decision, but I'm still going to stick with Makhachev, probably to win by decision against Arman Tsarukyan in the rematch. But I think it's going to be very close. I honestly do think it's going to be very close. I mean, he could potentially knock him out, right? Because Makhachev's got hands, but I think the fact that Makhachev has kind of fallen in love with his hands might work to his detriment in this fight. We'll see what ends up happening. I think it's a very, very great stylistic matchup. I think it's going to be the hardest fight for Islam Makhachev in the division. But ultimately, even I think that if Islam loses his fight against Arman Tsarukyan, the rematch, I think the UFC would make the trilogy. And I probably could see like Islam probably winning the trilogy. So I'm going to go with Islam to be the champion at the end of 2025. Maybe he even vacates the belt and moves up to the welterweight division if Bilal Muhammad loses against Shafkat. But I think Makhachev is still going to be the champion of the lightweight division at the end of 2025. I mean, as much as I hope that they make Topuria versus Makhachev, I don't think it happens next year for some reason. I just do not see it happening. I think Topuria is just not going to be active enough. Like, if he fought Volkanovski like in February, like the rematch in Australia, then I could potentially see Topuria fighting Makhachev at the end of the year. But because, you know, there's rumors of him fighting Volkanovski in June or May, I just don't think there's going to be enough time this year for him to fight Makhachev. Now, moving on to the welterweight division, I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to end up defeating Bilal Muhammad and becoming the champion and still being the champion of the welterweight division at the end of 2025, which I know is a very controversial opinion right now because Shavkat Rakhmonov had a very lackluster performance against Ian Gary. But I think part of the reason why he has such a lackluster performance against Ian Gary also has to do with Ian Gary's style. And we know Bilal Muhammad, he's a high volume, high pressure type of fighter. He's going to shoot takedowns. He's going to be in your face. And I feel like that type of style kind of works to the advantage of someone like Shavkat Rakhmonov, who has a lot of power, who's not, you know, I don't want to say flexible, but he's not very pretty when it comes to his striking. So if it becomes a scrap, I think it it benefits Shavkat. You know what I'm saying? It benefits Shavkat. I think he's a more durable fighter. I think he's the bigger fighter. I don't think he's going to be shooting takedowns on Bilal, but I don't think he's going to need to shoot takedowns on Bilal. I think he could beat him on the feet. And I think I could see, I think Shavkat's going to be Bilal. I think Shavkat's going to be Bilal. And I know that's a crazy take because I thought Shavkat looked horrible against Ian Gary. Bilal looked amazing against Leon. But when I think of the fight stylistically, I just think Shavkat will beat Bilal, and I think it's going to be an easier fight for him than his fight against Ian Gary, which I know is a little bit controversial, but I think Ian Gary kind of makes every fighter fight that way. Like, I feel like Ian Gary, runs around the cage, throws a couple low kicks, he has pretty good takedown defense, he doesn't impose a lot of power, and I think that in a way Shavkat Rakhmonov kind of respected Ian Gary a little bit too much, and I don't think he's going to have that same respect against Bilal Muhammad. Now, moving on to the middleweight division, I think Dricus du Plessis will be the champion at the end of 2025. I know a lot of people are expecting Khamzat Chimaev to be the champion, but man, keep doubting Dricus du Plessis and I'll keep making money because Dricus du Plessis is that guy. I thought he was going to be Sean Strickland. That turned out to be correct. Yes, it was a very, very close fight, but still, I still got it right. I picked Dricus du Plessis to pick Israel Adesanya in a fight where a lot of people were picking against him. People saying that Adesanya is going to beat him. This is a horrible fight for Dricus. Yada yada. I was one of the only YouTubers who predict Dricus du Plessis to submit Israel Adesanya. One of my best predictions for 2024. And I think that he's going to beat Sean Strickland in the rematch. I think he's going to make a statement. Then he's going to fight Khamzat Chimaev in the summer. And a lot of people are going to be picking Khamzat Chimaev. But Dricus du Plessis is that guy. I think he defeats Khamzat Chimaev. He's not the better wrestler. He's not the better grappler. But I think he could take Khamzat into the later rounds. I think his power, his volume, his endurance, his durability, his heart. I think he's going to break Khamzat Chimaev. That's my crazy prediction. Dricus du Plessis is that guy. And he would beat Khamzat Chimaev. And he will be the champion at the end of 2025. Bookmark it. Now for the light heavyweight division, we have Alex Pereira, currently the champion. This is another weird division. Right? Because, I mean, the only guy he really needs to fight right now at this point, excuse me, is Magomed Ankalaev. And I hope that fight happens. It seems like that fight might not happen. But I think it's going to end up happening. And I think Alex Pereira would beat Magomed Ankalaev. A year ago, I probably would have said maybe Magomed beats Alex Pereira, but after watching Magomed Ankalaev's performance against Alexander Rakic and then watching Pereira's performance against Khalil Roundtree, I think Pereira is just on a different level. And I just don't think Magomed Ankalaev is that grappler that you think he is. I don't think he's Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't think he's a Makhachev. And in all this time off, all these years that, Pereira hasn't really been tested in the grappling, he's gotten a lot better. He's been training with Glover Teixeira. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like I just see Magomed Ankalaev being very hesitant when it comes to the grappling against Alex Pereira because he's going to be scared of getting knocked out. And I think it's going to become a striking match. And because of that, I just think Alex Pereira is probably going to beat him by decision. I think Alex Pereira would beat Magomed Ankalaev. I just don't know. I see that fight kind of being a boring fight, which is kind of crazy. Like, I see Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev kind of being a boring fight. I see Ankalaev being very gun-shy, respecting Alex Pereira on the feet. And I think Alex Pereira would win that fight. And because of that, I think he's still going to be the champion at the end of 2025. I think if he beats Ankalaev, maybe he'll entertain the idea of moving up to heavyweight. Maybe wait for the winner of Aspinall and Jones. So because of that, I still think he'll be the champion for the light heavyweight division. Now for the heavyweight division, guys, I think Tom Aspinall is going to be the champion. I think this is a given. I think he's going to knock out John Jones. And maybe he fights Alex Pereira. We'll see. I hope that fight happens. I hope we see a couple of double champ fights in 2024. In 2025. I think that would be very exciting. But ultimately, guys, I think Tom Aspinall is still going to be the champion at the end of 2025. I think he'll beat John Jones. Maybe have one more title defense against, I don't know, Cyril Gane, who just had a very lackluster fight against Alexander Volkov. I think Tom Aspinall is just on a different level than the rest of the heavyweights. And even if he loses against John Jones, John Jones is probably going to retire. And then Aspinall is right back to a title shot. I think that's what would end up happening. So ultimately, guys, I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall to still be the champion at the end of 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I want to know your prediction for who's going to be UFC champion at the end of 2025, guys. Make sure to